What makes ordinary people do horrible things? How do entire societies end up tearing themselves apart with violence, cruelty, and division? These aren't just philosophical questions. They're painfully real, and history has shown us again and again that given the right conditions, even the most average person can get swept up in horrific acts. The scariest part, it doesn't happen all at once. And it's not just something that belongs to the past. The same forces that have fueled atrocities in history are still around today, quietly shaping how we think, how we treat each other, and how we justify our actions. Take one of the most horrifying examples in modern history, the Rwandan genocide of 1994. In just 100 days, about 800,000 people were brutally murdered. And this wasn't carried out by some foreign army or a ruthless dictator, it was neighbors killing neighbors. Friends, co-workers, even family members turned on each other. So, how does something like that happen? How does a whole population go from peaceful coexistence to mass slaughter in such a short time? It starts with propaganda. In Rwanda, the Tutsi people were portrayed through media and political messaging as subhuman, referred to as cockroaches, threats to society, enemies of the state. This wasn't accidental. It was a long, deliberate campaign to change how people saw each other. When someone's humanity is stripped away in your mind, hurting them becomes easier, sometimes even feels justified. And this isn't just about Rwanda. This pattern has repeated throughout history. It's how people get conditioned to accept cruelty, and in some cases, participate in it. Psychologists have studied this kind of transformation. One of the most famous examples is the Stanford Prison Experiment in 1971. In this study, college students were randomly assigned to be either prison guards or prisoners in a simulated prison. It was supposed to last 2 weeks, but they had to shut it down in just 6 days. Why? Because the students playing guards started to abuse the ones playing prisoners. No one ordered them to be cruel. It just happened as they got absorbed into their roles. What this shows is deeply unsettling. Cruelty doesn't always come from evil people. It can come from regular people who get caught in the wrong situation, who start believing the wrong things. And this kind of manipulation, this descent into dehumanization, is still happening today. It's just taken on new forms. Look at social media. It's turned into a battlefield of outrage and tribalism. People are no longer seen as individuals with opinions. We label them as threats, enemies, or idiots. And once someone gets that label, empathy shuts down. Online mobs harass, dox, cancel, and bully, often feeling totally justified in their actions. Because in their minds, they're not attacking a person, they're fighting an enemy. This is how the cycle begins. Not with violence, but with language. It starts when we casually dismiss entire groups of people as the problem. When we say things like, they're all the same, or, those people are dangerous. It might not feel like much, but it's the first step on a very dark road. So how do we avoid getting pulled into that? The first step is self-awareness. We need to catch ourselves when we start slipping into an us versus them mindset. Whenever we begin to see a group of people as the enemy, we should stop and ask, who benefits from this division? Who is fueling this narrative, and why? When we ask those questions, we start to take back control of how we think, and how we treat others. Another powerful antidote is to focus on individuals, not labels. No political group, no religion, no nation is a monolith. People are complex. Every person you meet has a unique mix of experiences, values, and struggles. When we actually talk to people, really listen to them, it disrupts the mental shortcuts that lead to prejudice. But resisting this kind of manipulation takes effort. Propaganda is everywhere. It doesn't always come from dictators, it can come from politicians, influencers, media outlets, even your own friends or family. Whenever you hear language that paints a group of people as less than human, that's a red flag. That kind of language has always been a precursor to violence. So why do people go along with these narratives? Why do they keep doing harmful things, even when they know better? One big reason is something called cognitive dissonance. That's the uncomfortable feeling we get when our actions don't match our values. And instead of admitting we're wrong, we often try to protect our self-image by rewriting the story. Let's say someone thinks of themselves as honest, but they get caught lying. Now they have two options: admit they did something wrong, or justify it by saying, well, I had no choice, or, it wasn't that bad. Most people choose the second one. Why? Because it feels better. But over time, that kind of self-justification chips away at your moral compass. This is how people end up justifying things they once thought were unthinkable. It's how corrupt leaders, war criminals, and everyday people convince themselves they're still good, even while doing real harm. And the most dangerous form of justification: believing you're doing it for a good cause. Throughout history, some of the worst atrocities were committed by people who thought they were on the right side. Religious wars, political purges, censorship, mass surveillance, they were all justified by the idea that the ends justified the means. When people are convinced their ideology is morally superior, they stop asking whether their actions are right or wrong. And once someone starts down that path, it becomes easier and easier to justify increasingly extreme behavior. Eventually, you reach the most terrifying stage: total dehumanization. At that point, people no longer even see the other side as human. And when someone isn't human in your eyes, anything becomes justifiable. This isn't just theory. It's happened before. In Rwanda, Hutu extremists used radio broadcasts to call Tutsis cockroaches. During the Holocaust, Nazi propaganda compared Jewish people to rats. In the American South during slavery, black people were legally classified as property. The goal was always the same: erase someone's humanity so you don't have to feel guilty about hurting them. And sadly, we're seeing echoes of this today. In political debates, on social media, even in casual conversations, people throw around dehumanizing labels without realizing the damage they're doing. So what can we do? We start by recognizing that none of us are immune. The most dangerous belief is thinking, "I would never do something like that." That kind of moral overconfidence makes us vulnerable. The truth is, we all have a capacity for darkness. But that also means we all have the power to choose a different path. Every time you're about to excuse behavior you'd normally condemn, stop. Every time you're tempted to label an entire group as the problem, pause. And every time you feel pressured to go along with something that feels wrong, question it. Because being a good person isn't just about what you believe. It's about what you do, especially when it's hard. So, how do we stop this downward spiral into dehumanization and cruelty? The answer isn't flashy or dramatic. It's slow, deliberate, and deeply personal. It starts with radical self-awareness. Ask yourself, am I being manipulated into seeing others as enemies? When you feel yourself slipping into anger, resentment, or a desire to punish people who disagree with you, pause. Take a breath. Ask, who is pushing this narrative? What did they gain from my outrage? Because behind every campaign of division, there's usually someone benefiting from it, politically, financially, or socially. It might feel small, but just questioning the story you're being sold is an act of resistance. And from there, we can go even deeper. Start seeing people as individuals again. Not as avatars of a political party. Not as representatives of a group you dislike. But as complex human beings with their own stories. Every ideology, every community, every belief system, contains a wide spectrum of people. When we reduce people to a label, we make it easy to hate them. But when we engage with them as individuals, we disrupt that mental shortcut. Suddenly, it's harder to paint the other side as evil when you've had a real conversation with someone on it. And here's the thing: propaganda thrives in echo chambers. It survives when people only talk to those who think exactly like them. So one of the most powerful things we can do is have hard conversations. Talk to people who challenge your worldview. Not to argue, not to win, but to understand, to stay curious, to humanize. This isn't just a feel-good idea, there's real science behind it. Studies in social psychology show that exposure to diverse perspectives reduces prejudice and increases empathy. It makes us less likely to fall into rigid thinking, and more likely to resist extremist ideas. Think about it. When you know people from different walks of life, different religions, political beliefs, cultures, it becomes harder for anyone to convince you that an entire group is evil. That kind of lived experience is a powerful defense against manipulation. But it's not just about protecting ourselves. It's also about protecting others. Because once you recognize how dangerous dehumanization can be, it's no longer enough to just not participate. You have to push back. History shows us that some of the greatest acts of courage came from ordinary people who refused to stay silent. People who hid Jewish families during the Holocaust. Whistleblowers who exposed corruption at great personal risk. Activists who spoke out even when it cost them their safety, their careers, or their freedom. These weren't superheroes. They were regular people who chose to act. And that choice made all the difference. Here's the truth: the biggest danger isn't always the people doing harm. It's the people who see the harm and choose to look away. Who tell themselves, it's not my problem, or, there's nothing I can do. But that silence, that inaction, creates the space for evil to grow. And yes, it's uncomfortable to speak up. It's easier to stay quiet, to keep your head down. But moral courage isn't about doing what's easy. It's about doing what's right, even when no one else is. So, next time you see a post online dehumanizing a group, or hear someone make a cruel joke about those people, ask yourself, what if I said something? Even a small comment like, hey, that's not okay, can disrupt the narrative. It might not change the world in that moment, but it sends a signal. It reminds others, and yourself, that cruelty shouldn't be normal. Because that's how cruelty becomes normalized, in silence. And that's also how it's stopped, by breaking the silence. But we also need to look inward. Because the hardest person to hold accountable is yourself. It's one thing to call out others, it's another to ask yourself tough questions like, am I making excuses for behavior I'd criticize in someone else? Am I letting my anger override my empathy? Am I so attached to my side that I can't see when we're doing harm? Those are not easy questions. But asking them keeps us grounded. It keeps us honest. And honesty, especially with yourself, is one of the most powerful tools against moral corruption. Because here's another uncomfortable truth: people don't just wake up one day and become villains. It happens gradually, through a series of justifications, compromises, and small decisions. Each one feels minor at the time, but over the years, they can lead you far from who you thought you were. That's why constant reflection is so important. Not once a year, not when something goes terribly wrong. Every day, in little moments. Because the ability to justify harm is a human trait. It lives in all of us. But so does the ability to resist. So does the capacity for compassion, accountability, and change. And let's talk about moral licensing for a second. That's when someone believes they're such a good person that their actions can't be wrong. I've done good things, so this one bad thing doesn't count. That mindset is dangerous, because it gives people permission to behave badly without guilt. We've all seen it. The activist who fights for justice, but treats people like garbage behind closed doors. The politician who claims to defend freedom, but silences dissent. The religious leader who preaches love, but spreads hate. Being good in one area doesn't excuse being cruel in another. And the moment we start believing we're above reproach, we stop growing. We stop questioning ourselves. And that's when we become dangerous. So the real challenge isn't to be perfect. It's to be honest. To recognize when we've crossed a line. To take responsibility and do better. And all of this, everything we've talked about, boils down to one central idea: choice. We all have the choice to either feed division or fight it. To either excuse cruelty or challenge it. To either retreat into silence or speak up when it matters. These choices might seem small. A conversation here, a comment there, a moment of reflection, but over time, they add up. They shape the kind of person you become, and the kind of world we all live in. So the question is, what kind of world do you want to help create? Because the truth is, the responsibility doesn't fall on them. It falls on each of us. Something feels off. You've sensed it, even if you can't quite explain it. There's a pattern, a kind of behavior. You've probably seen more than once. Certain women, certain choices. A refusal to grow up. Instead, they cling to childish fantasies and expect the world to just fix everything. And when that doesn't happen, they fall apart or lash out. If you've ever been caught in their drama, manipulated, emotionally drained, blamed for things you didn't do, then you already know this isn't just about immaturity. It runs deeper. It's a kind of mental prison, not just a phase someone outgrows. But before you assume this is some kind of hit piece or attack, pause. This isn't about condemnation. It's about understanding. Because immaturity, especially emotional immaturity, isn't random. It's a defense mechanism. A shield built from fear, fear that's so deep, it hides in the subconscious. Even the person stuck in it often doesn't realize what's going on. Carl Jung and other thinkers spent years exploring this through the lens of feminine archetypes: the girl, the princess, the wife, the sorceress. Each one is more than a character. Each one is a mirror, a reflection of a psyche caught in its own loop. So why do some women stay stuck? Why do some never evolve past these roles? Well, part of the reason is society itself. We've spent generations romanticizing women as delicate, emotionally wise, even morally superior. But here's the truth: the female psyche, like the male psyche, has shadows. It's not all light and softness. It's complex. It's conflicted. And often, those darker parts wear masks: masks of sweetness, innocence, or fragility. How many times have you seen a grown woman act like a child? Maybe she throws a tantrum, maybe she refuses to take responsibility, maybe she blames everyone but herself, her father, her boyfriend, society, fate. Anyone else. Never herself. That's the first real sign of arrested development: the inability to own your part in your own story. And this is where Jung's archetypes really start to make sense. According to him, a woman's psyche evolves in stages. From innocence to wisdom. From dependence to autonomy. But when that growth stalls, when something interrupts the process, immaturity takes root. That's when you meet women who might look like adults, but are still stuck in a kind of emotional childhood. Let's break it down. First, you've got the girl archetype. This is the easiest to recognize. She avoids responsibility. She expects someone else to protect her, to pay her way, to fix her problems. Her fragility. It's often more of a strategy than a reality. She doesn't argue logically, she cries. She doesn't negotiate, she manipulates. She lives with this quiet belief that the world owes her something. And the worst part: society often rewards this behavior. We're told that being delicate is feminine. That being too strong is off-putting. And so, the girl archetype thrives in a world that enables her. Until life delivers a harsh wake-up call, and she realizes she's completely unprepared to deal with it. Then there's the princess archetype. Same root issue, but now it's evolved into entitlement. This is the woman who believes she deserves it all: love, success, admiration, without the grind. She expects everything to just show up at her door. And when it doesn't, she doesn't adjust. She doesn't grow. She blames. She lashes out. She treats the universe like it's personally betrayed her. Because in her mind, she's the main character. In reality, better fall in line. But the most dangerous stage. That's the sorceress. At this point, immaturity stops looking like fragility or entitlement. Now, it looks like power, but not the healthy kind. This is power rooted in control, in seduction, in manipulation. The sorceress doesn't want love, she wants dominance. She doesn't want partnership, she wants puppets. She uses her charm, her drama, her emotional chaos to pull strings. She avoids facing her own insecurities by projecting them outward. And unlike the girl or the princess, the sorceress knows exactly what she's doing. This isn't naivety, it's strategy. But here's the twist no one talks about. Female immaturity isn't just an individual issue. It's a societal one. For generations, we've subtly, sometimes not so subtly, encouraged it. We've made fragility attractive. We've linked femininity to helplessness. We've rewarded women for being soft, indecisive, overly emotional, dependent. Why? Because it made them easier to protect. And, by extension, easier to control. The idea was, a woman who needs saving is a woman you can influence. And so, immaturity became a kind of unspoken survival strategy. A way to navigate a world that didn't give women real power. Back then, playing the girl, the princess, or even the sorceress wasn't always a conscious decision, it was adaptation. It was about survival. But here's the problem: the world has changed. Society has shifted. Opportunities have opened up. The old script, it's outdated. And yet, the programming is still running. That's the trap. Women today are often living in a psychological reality shaped for a world that no longer exists. The result: emotional childhood in adult bodies. A refusal to step into maturity because, deep down, they're terrified of what comes next. Because here's the real cost of growing up. Maturity means giving up the idea that someone will always be there to protect you. It means standing alone. It means facing the hard truth that no one is coming to save you. And that's a terrifying leap. So ask yourself this. If immaturity once kept women safe, what happens now that it doesn't? What happens when the tears no longer work? When the world stops treating you like a princess? When the manipulation loses its grip? The answer. We're seeing it in real time: identity crisis. Suddenly, the old tricks don't work. The world isn't playing along. And when that happens, when the safety net disappears, many women panic. They feel betrayed by a world that told them one thing and now demands something else. So, they look for new ways to cope. And often, those new mechanisms look a lot like victimhood, resentment, anger disguised as empowerment. But this isn't about one culture, or one country, or one generation. It's everywhere. Women who were never taught to take ownership. Women who resent maturity because it feels like a patriarchal burden. Women still searching for a father figure, when what they need is to become their own source of strength. And listen, this isn't about blame. It's not about shaming anyone. This is about asking the hard question. Who's brave enough to break the cycle? Because breaking it doesn't just mean changing your behavior. It means killing off the old identity. It means letting go of the girl who made you feel safe. The princess who made you feel important. The sorceress who gave you power through manipulation. It means standing naked in front of reality. No more illusions. No more masks. And that's terrifying. Because nothing hurts more than realizing the world doesn't revolve around you. But that's also where the real growth begins. So now we're here. The turning point. You've seen the roles. The girl. The princess. The sorceress. And maybe, just maybe, you've started recognizing them, not just in others, but maybe even in yourself. Here's the brutal truth. We all wear masks. We all have roles we've leaned on to feel safe, loved, or powerful. And for many women, immaturity has been that mask, a way to move through life without facing the storm head on. But let's not pretend this is just a personal struggle. There's something deeper at play, something unspoken. Because even after you've recognized immaturity, even after you understand how it works, there's still one question left hanging in the air. Why is it so hard to let go of? Why do so many women stay trapped in that loop, repeating the same patterns, sabotaging their own potential? It's not just about education. Not just about how you were raised. Not even just about culture. There's something older. Something buried. Fear. But not the obvious fears, not fear of failure or being alone. We're talking about something more primal. A fear passed down through generations. A fear encoded into the female psyche after centuries of surviving in a world that didn't allow independence. It's the fear of losing protection. Because historically, protection was everything. When women had no legal rights, no financial power, and no say in their futures, what was left? Adaptation. Be agreeable. Be desirable. Be fragile. And above all else, don't make waves. Don't get too strong. Don't get too smart. Because strength didn't always protect you. In fact, sometimes it painted a target on your back. So emotional immaturity became a tool. Not a flaw. Not a weakness. A strategy. Pretending to be helpless. That was how you secured safety. Acting indecisive, confused, overwhelmed. That kept the power dynamic in your favor, without ever needing to take control. Even the sorceress, the one who appears powerful, still plays from a place of fear. She's not grounded in real strength. She's just mastered the art of manipulation to stay safe and on top. But here's the kicker. That world, the one that required women to play those roles, it doesn't exist anymore. At least not in the same way. And yet, the emotional programming lingers. We're living in a new age, with old scripts still running the show. And that's why the system crashes. Because now, women are expected to be empowered, confident, and independent, while still carrying centuries of conditioning that taught them to be the opposite. And when those two worlds collide, that's where the chaos begins. Because deep down, maturing means giving up the tools that once kept you safe. It means no more leaning on charm, on helplessness, on theatrics. It means being honest with yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. It means admitting, no one is coming to save me. My life is in my hands. And every decision I make, good or bad, is mine to own. That's the weight of maturity. It's not glamorous. It's not pretty. It's not a TikTok glow up or an inspirational quote. It's lonely. It's raw. And it demands everything from you. So here's the real question we all have to answer. If emotional immaturity was once a survival strategy, What happens when it stops working? Because that's where many women find themselves right now. The tantrums don't land like they used to. The charm doesn't open the same doors. The fragility isn't rewarded, it's seen as weakness. And when that safety net falls away, panic sets in. It feels like betrayal, like the world changed the rules mid-game. And in that panic, something else creeps in, resentment. You start hearing it more and more. I shouldn't have to do this alone. Why is everything so hard now? This is the fault of men, or society, or the system. That's not empowerment. That's fear in disguise. Because empowerment doesn't need blame. It doesn't wait for permission. It steps into discomfort and says, let's go anyway. But not everyone gets there. Not everyone wants to. Some stay in the old roles, hoping the world will shift back to how it was. Others find new roles that look like strength, but are just as rooted in avoidance. We see it everywhere now. Women who reject maturity because it feels like a trap. Women who frame emotional growth as submission to the patriarchy. Women who swap one authority figure for another, looking for someone to tell them what to do. But again, this isn't about casting stones. It's about holding up a mirror. This is not just individual behavior, it's collective conditioning. And to break that conditioning, you have to be willing to lose a part of yourself. The inner child who believed the world would protect her. The inner princess who believed she was owed something. The inner sorceress who used emotional chaos to stay in control. You don't silence them, you outgrow them. That's the only way forward. And here's the part no one talks about. Maturity doesn't feel good at first. It's not a celebration, it's a funeral. You're grieving who you used to be. You're laying down your illusions. And in their place, you build something real, something that's actually yours. But that process, it's terrifying. Because when you remove the mask, what's left? Just you. No role. No script. Just a woman facing the truth of her own life. And the world doesn't make space for that easily. A mature woman who isn't playing a role, who isn't fishing for validation or begging to be rescued. That kind of woman is unsettling. She's called difficult, cold, unfeminine. Because she can't be manipulated. She doesn't need to be saved. And that means she can't be controlled. So again, the question stands. Who's really ready for that kind of freedom? Because it doesn't come cheap. It comes with judgment, with isolation, with the burden of responsibility. No one to blame, no excuses to hide behind. Just you, and the life you build with your own two hands. That's what growing up really means. And once you see that, once you understand the true cost of emotional maturity, you realize why so many avoid it. Because staying in emotional childhood, it's easy, it's familiar, it's even socially acceptable. But it's a cage. And no one tells you this, but the door to that cage has been open the whole time. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. So now we've arrived at the heart of it. We've talked about the masks, the girl, the princess, the sorceress. We've talked about the fear that keeps those masks glued on. But we haven't touched on the most dangerous form of immaturity yet. And that's when it becomes a weapon. Because at a certain point, we're no longer dealing with someone who's afraid. We're dealing with someone who's learned that immaturity can be powerful, not just protective. This isn't helplessness anymore. This is sabotage. Now let's be clear, not every woman stuck in emotional immaturity is doing it intentionally. Many are simply caught in old patterns, stuck in survival mode. But some have figured out that immaturity can get them what they want. And that's where things get dark. Because immaturity can show up in ways that don't even look like immaturity at all. It can look like charm. It can look like vulnerability. It can even look like empowerment, until you scratch the surface. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone who cries whenever they're challenged? Who melts down the moment they're criticized? Who twists every disagreement into an emotional crisis? That's not fragility. That's control. It's not a meltdown, it's a message. Back off. Don't question me. Don't make me look at myself. And the scary part, it works. Because we live in a world that still, to this day, is wired to protect fragile women. We're taught not to push too hard, not to hurt her feelings, not to hold her accountable. There's this quiet social agreement. If she's crying, she must be the victim. If she's emotional, she must be right. But emotion isn't morality. And tears aren't truth. Yet this loophole exists, and some people learn to exploit it. It's why some women never learn to communicate like adults. Why some avoid honest conversations by shifting into drama. Why some sabotage relationships when things get too real, too uncomfortable, too adult. Because maturity doesn't offer the same immediate rewards. Maturity demands effort. It means dealing with discomfort instead of dodging it. It means admitting fault instead of pointing fingers. And for those who've grown comfortable using immaturity to navigate life, giving that up feels like surrendering a superpower. But here's the fallout. When immaturity is used as a weapon, relationships crumble. Not just romantic ones, all of them. Friends pull away. Partners give up. Coworkers tiptoe or detach. Because no one wants to walk through life on eggshells. And that isolation, that loneliness, it gets reinterpreted again and again as proof. People just can't handle me. I'm too emotional. I'm too much. But that's not the truth. The truth is, people can't connect with someone who refuses to grow. Because emotional growth isn't just about you, it's about your impact on others. It's about whether you build or destroy. Whether you communicate or manipulate. Whether you take responsibility, or hide behind excuses. And maybe you've seen this pattern repeat. Women who once seemed powerful or magnetic, eventually unravel. Their relationships deteriorate. Their confidence becomes fragile. The world stops responding the way it used to. Because the strategy that once worked, that once got sympathy, support, or control, stops being effective. And here's why. The world is changing. We're moving into a space where emotional adulthood isn't just respected, it's expected. Where manipulation gets called out. Where drama doesn't fly. Where, that's just how women are, is no longer a valid excuse. This doesn't mean women need to be cold or emotionless. It means real strength has to replace performance. Because when immaturity is never challenged, it becomes reinforced. And when it's reinforced long enough, it calcifies into identity. But identity can be rewritten. So the question becomes, are you willing to face what immaturity has cost you? Not just in your life, but in your relationships, your goals, your